The twin suns of Artura Prime glimmered across the vast expanse of Galaxis Academy, a renowned institution of intergalactic learning where beings from across the universe gathered to study and exchange knowledge. Among them was Tyra, an alien girl from the elite Kinter species, a race known for their advanced telepathic abilities and towering intellect. Her violet eyes scanned the new faces in the courtyard, each representing a different world, but none could compare to the sophistication of her kind. The Kinters were seen as superior, especially in a place like Galaxis Academy, where mental prowess was the key to success. On the first day of the new academic year, Thyra walked confidently through the crowd, her emerald green skin shimmering in the sunlight. Her thoughts were calm, yet judgmental, as she sized up the new arrivals. Kinter excellence reigns supreme. She reminded herself, silently communicating with her fellow Kinter classmates through their shared telepathic link. As she made her way to the main assembly hall, a ripple of excitement buzzed through the crowd. A new student had been announced, someone entirely unexpected. A human boy named Leo. Katira's lips curled into a slight smirk. Humans, she mused, were primitive, lacking the advanced mental capacities that races like hers possessed. What could a human possibly contribute here? The headmaster introduced Leo to the student body, but Sarah barely listened. Her attention was on the human, observing him with mild curiosity, quickly turning into disdain. Leo stood awkwardly at the front, clearly uncomfortable in the presence of so many alien beings. He was tall, with sandy brown hair and a look of nervous determination. His simple earth clothing was a stark contrast to the sleek, high-tech outfits worn by his peers. Zyra's telepathic voice reached out to her friends. A human. How quaint. This should be entertaining. They all shared a mental laugh at Leo's expense. As the headmaster concluded the ceremony, Zyra was convinced that Leo would be nothing more than a source of amusement. His species was known for their emotional nature, after all, and they lacked the telepathic skills that the Kintars and other advanced species at the Academy thrived on. The first few days of classes went exactly as Tyra expected. Leo struggled to keep up. In a place where students communicated more through thought than speech, Leo's reliance on verbal communication and outdated Earth technology made him stand out for all the wrong reasons. Tyra made sure to telepathically share her amusement with her Kinter classmates every time he stumbled or failed to understand a lesson. Yet despite the constant embarrassment and ridicule, Leo remained determined. His focus never wavered, and Tyra couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity about him. What drove him to endure such humiliation? Little did Tyra know that her curiosity about the human boy would lead her to discover secrets about Earth and its people that she could have never imagined. Days passed, and Leo's struggles continued. Tyra often found herself watching him from afar, still sharing her mocking thoughts with her friends, but increasingly perplexed by his resilience. Unlike other students, Leo didn't show signs of defeat. He continued to study hard, staying late in the library, and asking questions during class, even if it meant facing more ridicule. During one particularly challenging quantum mechanics lecture, the students were given a complex problem to solve. Tyra, confident in her abilities, quickly finished and glanced around the room. As expected, many students were still working, including Leo. She smirked, ready to make another telepathic joke to her Kinter friends. But something was different this time. Leo wasn't struggling. In fact, he seemed deeply focused, his brow furrowed in concentration. Moments later, he raised his hand and asked the professor if he could present his solution. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him, expecting another failure. Leo walked to the front of the class, his posture tense but determined. Tyra was prepared to watch him fail spectacularly, but as he began explaining his solution, she felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. His solution was not only correct but impressively sophisticated. His understanding of the subject was far beyond what anyone had expected. For the first time, Tyra felt a flicker of respect for the human boy. How had he, a member of such a primitive species, managed to grasp such a complex concept so quickly? She couldn't deny that there was something more to Leo than met the eye. Later that day, Syra found herself in the Academy's library, watching Leo from a distance as he pored over a stack of ancient texts and scientific journals. She had never seen a human so dedicated to learning. Her curiosity finally got the better of her, and she approached him. "Leo," she said, her voice tinged with reluctant curiosity, "how did you solve that problem in class today?" Leo looked up, surprised that she was talking to him. A small smile appeared on his face. "It's all about breaking things down piece by piece. I've learned to analyze complex problems step by step, and I don't mind making mistakes along the way. That's how I learn." Syra blinked, taken aback by his humble response. She had expected arrogance or defensiveness, but instead, she found a thoughtful, methodical mind. As they continued talking, Syra realized that Leo's knowledge, while different from hers, was profound in its own way. His human perspective, rooted in persistence and creativity, was something she had never encountered before. Over the next few weeks, Syra and Leo began to meet regularly, exchanging ideas and perspectives. Slowly, Syra's perception of him began to change. He wasn't just a primitive human. He was intelligent, determined, and capable of understanding things in ways that even her advanced Kinter mind couldn't fully grasp. But Syra's newfound respect for Leo was about to be tested in ways she couldn't have imagined. As Syra and Leo's friendship deepened, they found themselves discussing more than just academic topics. They explored philosophical questions, scientific theories, and even cultural differences between their species. Syra had begun to see Leo not as a lesser being, but as an equal, someone who thought differently but was just as capable. The walls of prejudice she had once held so tightly started to crumble. One evening, while sitting in a quiet corner of the Academy's massive library, Leo grew unusually quiet. His eyes were distant, and his usual eagerness to engage in their discussion seemed dulled. Syra noticed the change immediately. "Is something wrong?" she asked, concerned by his uncharacteristic silence. Leo hesitated, glancing around as if making sure no one else was nearby. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "There's something I haven't told you." Syra's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen Leo so serious. "What is it?" she asked, her voice steady, but filled with curiosity. Leo took a deep breath before speaking. "I wasn't just sent here to study. I'm on a mission from the United Earth Alliance." Syra blinked, taken aback. A mission? What could a human be sent to do at Galaxis Academy? Her mind raced through possibilities, but none made sense. "What kind of mission?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Leo looked her in the eyes, his face reflecting the weight of what he was about to reveal. "There's a secret project here at the Academy. It's something powerful, a device that can manipulate space-time itself. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could change the balance of power in the galaxy." Syra's pulse quickened. The idea of such a device was almost unimaginable. Manipulating space-time, that level of technology was far beyond even the Kinters. "And you were sent to, what? Protect it? Steal it?" she asked, her mind swirling with questions. "Neither," Leo replied. "I was sent to ensure it doesn't fall into the hands of those who would misuse it. My mission is to gather intelligence and, if necessary, sabotage any efforts to weaponize the device." Syra leaned back, processing what she had just heard. The human boy she had once mocked was part of an intergalactic mission to prevent a potential catastrophe. The simplicity of her previous assumptions about him now seemed laughable. "But why send you?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. "Why would the United Earth Alliance trust a human, someone from a species that's not even telepathically advanced, with something so important?" Leo smiled faintly. "That's the thing, isn't it? We humans might not be the most advanced species in the galaxy, but we've always been underestimated. And that's our advantage. No one expects much from us, which makes us the perfect candidates for missions like this. Zutara felt a strange mixture of emotions. Respect, certainly, but also fear. The stakes of what Leo was telling her were enormous. The academy wasn't just a place of learning. It was a potential battleground for control over the galaxy's most dangerous secret. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked after a long pause. "Why trust me with something so sensitive?" Leo looked at her, his expression soft but serious. "Because I trust you, Tyra. I've seen how brilliant you are, how deeply you care about knowledge and the truth. I believe you'd want to stop something like this from being misused as much as I do." For the first time, Zyra felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had always considered herself an exceptional student, someone who sought the advancement of knowledge above all else. But now, she was being asked to consider something much greater: the future of the galaxy. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "This is a lot to take in." Leo nodded. "I understand. I've been carrying this weight alone since I got here. But I think I need help, and I believe you're the right person to help me." Zyra's mind was racing. She had never imagined herself getting involved in something so monumental, so dangerous. But Leo was right. If this device was real, and if it truly had the power to manipulate space-time, the consequences could be catastrophic. She couldn't sit back and let it be exploited by those who sought only power. "I'll help you," she said quietly, her voice filled with determination. "But we'll need to be careful. If anyone finds out what you're doing, or that I'm involved, we could both be in serious danger." Leo smiled, a look of relief washing over his face. "I knew I could count on you." As the two sat in the dimly lit library, they began to plan their next steps. Thyra knew that this wasn't just about helping Leo anymore. It was about protecting something much larger than either of them. Together, they would have to navigate the complexities of the academy, uncover the truth about the secret project, and ensure that it didn't become a weapon in a war that could destroy the galaxy. But as they left the library that night, Thyra couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The following days at Galaxis Academy were a blur of tense planning and careful observations. Thyra and Leo kept their interactions discreet, meeting in hidden corners of the campus and exchanging only fleeting glances in public. Despite the growing gravity of their mission, the routine of school life continued as usual. Classes on quantum physics, intergalactic politics, and starship engineering passed by. But Thyra's mind was constantly consumed by the secret project Leo had revealed. Late one night, after a long day of lectures, Thyra found herself once again in the library. The massive glass windows showed a galaxy full of stars, a sight that usually comforted her. But now she felt uneasy. The weight of what they were involved in had settled heavily on her shoulders. Leo quietly approached their usual spot, looking more cautious than usual. "I think I've found something," he whispered, sliding into the seat across from her. Thyra leaned forward. "What is it?" "I've been digging through the Academy's database, and I found references to a project called Chronosphere. It's hidden deep within the system, but it's mentioned in a few old files." "Chronosphere," Thyra repeated, the name sending a chill down her spine. "What does it do?" Leo glanced around to ensure no one was nearby. "From what I can gather, it's some kind of device that can bend spacetime. Imagine being able to control time, pause it, speed it up, or even reverse it. The implications are terrifying." Zyra's breath caught in her throat. The concept was mind-boggling. A device that could manipulate time itself was beyond anything she had ever studied. The dangers were equally unimaginable. "And you're sure the Academy is building it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure," Leo admitted, "but I think we're close to the truth. There are restricted areas in the Academy, labs that only a few people have access to. I believe that's where it's being developed." Zyra frowned. "If that's true, we'll need to find a way in." "That's what I've been thinking," Leo said, his voice steady, but filled with the weight of the task ahead. I've already started mapping out the security systems. It's not going to be easy, but I think we can disable them long enough to sneak inside. Zyra's heart raced at the thought of sneaking into a restricted area of the academy. The risks were enormous. If they were caught, it wouldn't just mean expulsion. It could mean imprisonment or worse. But Zyra knew they didn't have a choice. If the chronosphere was real, and if it was as powerful as Leo suspected, they had to stop it from being misused. "I'm in," she said, her voice filled with determination. For the next several days, Zyra and Leo worked in secret, gathering everything they needed for their mission. Zyra used her telepathic abilities to subtly influence others, making sure no one suspected them. Leo, meanwhile, continued his work on hacking into the Academy's security systems, learning the patterns of the guards and studying the locks on the restricted labs. Finally, the night of their break-in arrived. The Academy was quiet, the towering spires casting long shadows under the light of distant stars. Zyra and Leo met in a dark alley behind one of the research buildings, their hearts pounding in their chests. "You ready?" Leo asked, adjusting the small device he had built to disable the security cameras. Zyra nodded, her face set in determination. "Let's do this." Leo activated the device, and the nearby security cameras flickered and went dark. Moving quickly, the two of them slipped through the outer doors of the building, their footsteps silent on the cold metal floor. They made their way through a series of narrow hallways, dodging the occasional security droid, and keeping their telepathic senses alert for any signs of danger. Finally, they reached the door to the restricted lab. Leo pulled out a small device and began working on the lock, his fingers moving quickly over the keypad. Zyra stood guard, her senses heightened, ready to alert Leo at the first sign of trouble. After what felt like an eternity, the lock clicked open. "We're in," Leo whispered, pushing the door open just enough for them to slip inside. The lab was enormous, filled with advanced technology that Zyra had never seen before. At the center of the room stood a massive spherical device, the chronosphere. It pulsed with a faint blue light, and Zyra could feel the energy radiating from it, making the air around them feel heavy and thick. "This is it," Leo whispered, his eyes wide with awe. The chronosphere. Zyra approached the device cautiously, her mind racing with questions. How do we stop it? Leo stepped forward, examining the control panel. "I think I can shut it down, but it'll take time. You'll need to keep watch." Zyra nodded, turning to face the door as Leo began working on the controls. Her telepathic senses were on high alert, scanning the area for any sign of danger. But just as Leo began typing in commands, a sudden, overwhelming presence filled her mind. "We have intruders," a voice echoed in her thoughts, cold and menacing. Zyra's heart froze. They weren't alone. Before she could react, the door to the lab burst open, and two Kenter guards stormed inside, their weapons raised. Zyra barely had time to raise her telepathic shield before the first shot rang out. "Leo, we need to go," she shouted, her voice laced with panic. Leo frantically continued typing. "I'm almost done. Just a few more seconds." Zyra gritted her teeth, focusing all her energy on deflecting the guards' attacks. She could feel her strength waning, but she refused to give up. Leo needed more time. With a final keystroke, the chronosphere powered down, its blue light fading into darkness. "Got it," Leo shouted. "Let's get out of here." The two of them bolted for the door, dodging the guards and sprinting down the hallways as alarms blared throughout the building. They ran as fast as they could, adrenaline fueling their escape. As they finally burst out into the open air, Zyra gasped for breath, her heart pounding in her chest. They had done it. They had stopped the chronosphere, at least for now. But as they disappeared into the shadows of the academy, Zyra knew this was only the beginning. Zyra and Leo's narrow escape from the lab marked a turning point in their mission. They had successfully disabled the chronosphere, but the consequences of their actions were already beginning to unfold. As the night gave way to dawn, a tense stillness settled over Galaxis Academy. The once bustling halls were now eerily quiet, and rumors of the incident spread like wildfire among the students. Zira couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She kept her telepathic senses wide open, constantly scanning for signs of danger. But despite the unease, she knew they couldn't stop now. The chronosphere might have been temporarily shut down, but it was only a matter of time before someone tried to reactivate it. And now, the Academy's leaders would be on high alert. Sitting in a quiet corner of the library, Zyra and Leo met to discuss their next steps. Both of them looked exhausted, the weight of the night's events etched on their faces. "We bought ourselves some time," Leo said, his voice low. "But it's not over. The Chronosphere project is too valuable for them to abandon. They'll figure out we were involved soon enough." Zyra nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "We need to find out who's behind the project. If we can expose them to the rest of the galaxy, they won't be able to keep it hidden." Leo leaned back, rubbing his temples in frustration. "That's the problem. The chronosphere is too dangerous for anyone to have, but how do we convince people of that without getting ourselves killed?" A silence fell between them as they both considered the risks. They were two students against a powerful organization that spanned multiple star systems. The odds were overwhelmingly against them. "We'll need help," Zyra finally said, breaking the silence. "We can't do this alone." "But who can we trust?" Leo asked, his voice filled with doubt. "If we tell the wrong person, it could blow everything." Zyra thought for a moment before an idea came to her. "There's someone I know. Her name is Professor Talia. She's an expert in temporal mechanics and one of the most respected figures at the Academy. If anyone would understand the dangers of the chronosphere, it's her." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure we can trust her?" "I don't know," Zyra admitted, "but it's worth a shot. If we can get her on our side, she might be able to help us stop this." Reluctantly, Leo agreed. They didn't have many options, and time was running out. The plan was set. Zyra would approach Professor Talia and gauge her reaction. If she could convince the professor of the threat posed by the chronosphere, they might have a chance to expose the project before it was too late. The next day, Zyra made her way to Professor Talia's office. Her heart pounded in her chest as she walked through the pristine halls of the Academy, her mind racing with the possibilities. What if Talia was involved in the project? What if she turned them in? But Zyra couldn't let fear paralyze her. They needed an ally, and this was their best shot. She arrived at the professor's office and hesitated for a moment before knocking on the door. A few seconds later, the door slid open to reveal a tall, middle-aged woman with striking silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Zyra, come in," Professor Talia said warmly, gesturing for her to enter. "What brings you here?" Zyra stepped inside, her palms sweaty as she struggled to find the right words. "Professor, there's something I need to talk to you about. It's important." Talia raised an eyebrow, but motioned for Zyra to sit. "Go on." Taking a deep breath, Zyra began to explain. She told the professor everything about the chronosphere, the break-in, and the dangers it posed. She spoke quickly, her words spilling out in a rush, hoping desperately that the professor would understand. To her surprise, Professor Talia remained calm throughout the entire explanation. She listened intently, her expression unreadable. When Zyra finally finished, the room was filled with a heavy silence. For a long moment, Talia didn't say anything. Then, slowly, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. "I suspected something was happening at the Academy, but I had no idea it had gone this far." Zyra's heart skipped a beat. "You believe me?" "I do," Talia said quietly. "The idea of manipulating space-time is not new, but the consequences of doing so on such a scale are catastrophic. If the chronosphere is real, then you're right to be worried." Relief washed over Zyra. She had been so afraid that the professor wouldn't believe her, but now it felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. "What do we do?" Kyra asked. Talia stood up and began pacing the room, deep in thought. "We need to gather evidence, something undeniable that can't be swept under the rug. If we can expose this project to the public, the Academy will have no choice but to shut it down." "But how do we get that evidence?" Kyra asked, her mind racing. "We can't just break back into the lab. Security will be tighter than ever." Talia stopped pacing and turned to face Kyra. "There's a hidden server room beneath the Academy. It's where they store classified data on all high-level projects. If you can access that room and download the files on the chronosphere, we'll have everything we need." Kyra felt a surge of hope. It was dangerous, but it was a plan. "I'll do it," she said without hesitation. Talia smiled faintly. "I had a feeling you would." Later that evening, Kyra met Leo in the dormitory, her heart still racing from her conversation with Talia. "She believes us," Kyra said as soon as Leo arrived. "And she knows how we can get the evidence we need." Leo's eyes widened in surprise. "That's incredible. What's the plan?" Kyra quickly explained the hidden server room and Talia's suggestion to download the classified files. Leo listened intently, nodding as she spoke. "It's risky," he said when she finished, "but it's our best shot." Together, they began planning their next move, knowing that this mission would be even more dangerous than the last. The price of secrets was high, but Kyra and Leo were determined to pay it. As the night stretched on, and the stars glittered above the Academy, Kyra knew that the path ahead would be treacherous, but she also knew that they couldn't turn back now. The truth was out there, and they were going to find it. The Academy's main halls were mostly empty by the time Kyra and Leo set out for the hidden server room. The sun had long since set, and only the faint hum of the Academy's automated systems accompanied their stealthy movements. They wore dark cloaks to blend into the shadows, and Kyra kept her telepathic senses alert, scanning for anyone who might be nearby. Leo carried a small device, a data siphon, that Professor Talia had given them to access the files they needed. If they could just make it to the server room undetected, they might be able to get in and out without alerting the Academy's security. As they approached the entrance to the lower levels, Leo glanced nervously at Kyra. "You sure this is going to work?" Kyra, though just as uncertain, nodded firmly. "It has to. We've come too far to turn back now." The access hatch to the lower levels was located behind an old maintenance panel, hidden in a rarely used section of the Academy. Kyra pressed her hand against the panel, using her telepathic abilities to manipulate the electronic lock. After a few tense moments, the hatch opened with a soft click. "This way," she whispered, motioning for Leo to follow. The air in the tunnels below the Academy was cool and damp, and the corridors were dimly lit. They made their way cautiously, keeping their footsteps as quiet as possible. The server room, according to Professor Talia, was located at the very bottom of the Academy, accessible only through these hidden passages. After what felt like hours of walking, they finally reached the heavy metal door that led to the server room. Kyra placed her hand on the biometric scanner next to the door, her telepathic abilities allowing her to override the security system. The door slid open with a low hiss, revealing rows of towering data servers, their lights blinking in the darkness. The room was eerily silent, save for the soft hum of the machines. Leo wasted no time. He hurried over to one of the consoles and plugged in the data siphon. Kyra stood watch at the door, her heart pounding in her chest. Every second they spent in the room increased the risk of being discovered. Almost there, Leo muttered, his fingers flying over the console as he navigated the Academy's security protocols. Just a little longer. Kyra's telepathic senses flared suddenly. Someone was approaching. She turned to Leo, her voice urgent. "We've got company." Leo cursed under his breath. "I need another minute." The footsteps grew louder. Zyra could sense at least two people coming down the corridor toward them. There was no time to run. They were trapped. As Leo finished downloading the files, the door to the server room slid open. Two Academy guards stepped inside, their eyes widening in surprise as they spotted the intruders. "Freeze!" one of the guards shouted, raising his weapon. Zyra acted on instinct. She reached out with her mind, using her telepathic abilities to scramble the guards' thoughts. They staggered, momentarily disoriented, giving Leo just enough time to grab the data siphon and make a run for it. "Go!" Zyra shouted, pulling Leo toward the exit. They sprinted down the corridor, the sound of the guards regaining their senses echoing behind them. Alarms blared throughout the academy as security systems were activated. Their window of escape was rapidly closing. Zyra led the way, her mind working overtime as she telepathically manipulated doors and locks to slow down their pursuers. But the guards were gaining on them, and Zyra could feel the strain of using her abilities starting to take its toll. Just as they reached the final tunnel leading back to the surface, a blast of energy shot past them, narrowly missing Leo. Zyra turned, her heart racing, and saw the guards closing in fast. "We're not going to make it," Leo shouted, panic creeping into his voice. But Zyra refused to give up. She focused all her remaining strength on one final telepathic push, sending a powerful wave of energy toward the guards. The tunnel trembled as the ceiling collapsed behind them, cutting off the guards' path. Breathing heavily, Zyra and Leo stumbled out of the tunnels and into the cool night air. They were bruised, exhausted, but alive. The following days were a whirlwind of tension and fear. Zyra and Leo had successfully escaped with the data, but they knew it was only a matter of time before the Academy found them. They spent their nights in hiding, poring over the files they had stolen. The information was staggering. The chronosphere was far more dangerous than they had imagined. The device had the power not only to manipulate time, but to alter entire timelines, effectively rewriting history. In the wrong hands, it could be used to erase entire civilizations, to shift the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "We need to go public," Leo said one night, his face pale as he scrolled through the data. "If we don't, they'll use this thing, and the galaxy will never be the same." Zyra nodded grimly. "But how? The Academy controls the media. If we just release this, they'll bury it before anyone even sees it." Leo thought for a moment before his eyes lit up. "The Galactic Senate. They oversee all interplanetary affairs. If we can present this to them, they'll have no choice but to investigate." It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. The next day, with the help of Professor Talia, they managed to contact a trusted senator from Earth who agreed to meet with them. The senator, a stern but fair woman named Aria Veller, listened carefully as Zyra and Leo presented their findings. "This is troubling," Senator Veller said after a long silence. "If what you're saying is true, then this project represents a threat to the entire galaxy." "It is true," Leo said, his voice firm. "We have the data to prove it." Senator Veller nodded slowly. "I will take this to the Senate. But understand, the Academy is a powerful institution. There will be resistance. You've made dangerous enemies. We're already in danger," Zyra said, her voice steady. "But we can't let them get away with this." True to her word, Senator Veller brought the Chronosphere Project before the Galactic Senate. The revelation sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The Academy, once revered for its contributions to science and exploration, was suddenly under intense scrutiny. Investigations were launched, and the project was shut down indefinitely. The chronosphere, deemed too dangerous for any species to control, was dismantled and its components scattered across the galaxy to prevent anyone from reconstructing it. In the aftermath, Zyra and Leo found themselves hailed as heroes. Their actions had prevented a galactic catastrophe, and their bond, once forged in distrust and mockery, had grown into a deep and lasting friendship. As they stood together on a balcony overlooking the Academy, now under new leadership. Kyra smiled at Leo. "You did good, human," she said, her tone teasing but warm. Leo grinned. "You're not so bad yourself, alien." They both laughed, the weight of their journey finally lifting from their shoulders. Together, they had proven that no matter how different they seemed, they could accomplish great things when they worked together. And as the stars twinkled above them, Syra knew that this was just the beginning of their adventures.